to touch a little bit on the on our ongoing information gathering and openness to information about a treatment technique approach for the entire class of PFAS. So just a little, what have I done now? So just a little background on this topic. So as came up earlier, late last year, the DEP did get a petition from the Conservation Law Foundation and the Toxics Action Center, and the petition was a petition for rulemaking to establish a treatment technique drinking water standard for PFAS. And what that petition basically asked for was asked DEP to establish a treatment technique standard for the entire class of PFAS, and it also urged as an interim step to adopt what at that time was Vermont's, it still is Vermont's health advisory 20 parts per trillion for the 5 long-chain compounds, and also asked at a minimum that DEP promulgate an MCL for the PFAS for which we have toxicity information and analytical information. So as people know, we are going forward with the MCL process right now, and we're looking at, we've built upon the Vermont approach and added one additional compound in. In our response to that petition, we said we continue to be open to additional information on toxicity, on analytical methods, on treatment technology, on costs associated, and that's a lot of what we talked about today, but this is also beyond the 6 long-chain compounds that we're currently proposing in the MCP regulations, but for the entire family or broader compounds beyond those 6 that we're currently looking at. So what we want to do today was have a short forum for anyone to identify any new information in any of these areas, new toxicological information, new studies. We'd already mentioned that earlier today about how anyone watching today, any of the stakeholders, when you get that additional information, make it available to us. But we did want to have at least a placeholder today for hearing any additional information you want to point us to. Can't do a deep dive on it today, but if you point us to information, we can then follow up, get the details, and consider that as we look beyond, still continue to look beyond the 6 compounds that are in the MCP draft, at any other compounds in the full class. So that would include new toxicological information, more information on how a treatment technique would actually be implemented in terms of what would trigger it and what kind of treatment would be required, which public water systems would be subject to it if there were such a thing, and laboratory capacity for compounds beyond what's in method 537 and 537-1. And also additional information on treatment technologies that are known for PFAS removal and destruction and costs associated. So with that, we'll just open it up. If anyone wants to point us, identify some additional information, point us to it now. You can mention it, flag it. But then also we've got our again, the last slide will have the email address where we just welcome any additional information, references that you can point us to. So we'll start with Kristen.
Last week, Linda Birnbaum said to the PFAS, the second National PFAS Conference, that if looking at rat studies, pancreatic tumors begin showing up very, very early, and an appropriate MCL for PFOA would be 0.1 parts per trillion. That data goes with the study. It is not published yet, but the statistical analysis is out, as is the summary, which is what I just handed you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Anybody want to point to anything else? And again, this will be an ongoing process, so we continue to be to really welcome any additional info you can give us. Okay. So now we're just going to do a quick wrap up. I think Stephanie and I might do this together. Or should I start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, good. So, so as Paul said, the comment period on the proposed groundwater cleanup standard and soil standard is, the comment period closes on July 19th. Damon referenced our targeted public water supply sampling. So we're still developing what that approach is going to look like, but I would suspect that would be rolling out in the near future, and we'll have a chance to communicate more with this group about our plans for that. We are also considering, as Mark said, we're considering revising the ORSG, which again, we're looking at what comments come in on the MCP draft and considering whether it is appropriate to make a revision to the Office of Research and Standard Guidelines, given that we're considering the MCP rule and then also now in the process of looking at, committed to developing an MCL. David mentioned briefly this question about what disposal and management guidelines there should be for treatment media that has been saturated with the PFAS, so carbon or other media, after it's been used and it's spent, how do you dispose of it? So we are wrestling with that, and we're also looking very closely at what other states and other jurisdictions are coming up with that. We will be coming out with a proposed rule for lab certification for PFAS so that we can do our own certification of state labs. Right now we're just doing a reciprocal, relying on other third-party certifications, and you can expect that in the fall of 2019. And right now we're targeting to be able to come out with a proposed drinking water rule by the end of 2019. So starting the formal rulemaking process. Stephanie, is there anything else I should say about next steps?
I think you covered it well, Doug. I think, as has been emphasized throughout the discussion today, we've got excellent input today. We got excellent input at the first meeting and then in between, and that can continue to be a rolling process. And I think sort of one question on our minds, we went into this meeting thinking, we're not sure if the group will decide that we need to have another meeting as this stakeholder group, or is the next step sort of this continual sort of iterative exchanging of information and the department going and developing the rule and then going through the formal rulemaking process, which is the full public process. So I think we're open on that point. I think we feel urgency, as we know all of you do, to move this process along, but at the same time we want to make sure that we are engaging and considering all the factors that you all are suggesting that we look at, if we're not already. So people can, you don't have to answer that question today, but we can stay open on that point too. And clearly, as we're going into the summer months, if we were to have another meeting, it would be in the fall.
Steve?
So MCP comments are due July 19th.
That's right, yeah.
And you have people that's down the MCC proposed anticipated end of this year. When's the anticipated MCP regulation? Update.
That would likely be in the fall.
So, yeah, so the question is, when would we likely see a final MCP promulgation that would include the PFAS standard? And so we're thinking fall 2019.
Right, and again, as we've talked about, the information, PFAS information that comes through that process is being considered in this process too, so they're very much, connected.
And our intention is, because we're going to be diving in on the MCL development, that will be the first slice of the MCP comments that the drinking water program is looking at, and that the Office of Research and Standards is looking at, is the PFAS comments. Meanwhile, there are, as Paul said, there are a number of other components of the draft MCP package, so they have to wrestle with all that, but sort of job one for drinking water and for the Office of Research and Standards to dive into the PFAS comments that we're getting. Jen?
So you would put out the proposal but then there's the comment period, and so I'd like to just ask that you have an extended comment period as you have under MCP so that our members have full time to evaluate the proposed regulations.
Good. Thank you for the comment. Okay.
And certainly, we will continue to keep this group updated on our rulemaking. When we make it available, what all the hearing schedule and the comment schedules and that, you're sort of on our mailing list now, so no matter what, you'll be hearing about what we're doing.
Excellent questions.
Yes.
The ORSG revision, if you were to do that, how soon would you do that?
So at this point, that's just under consideration, so that's an if, and, the when would come after that, so.
Right, it would be nice to know when. Would that be after the public comment period ends, or after the?
We would definitely be looking at the comments that come in through the MCP
Okay.
public comment process. And then we would also definitely keep this group informed if we're gonna be going forward with an ORSG in advance of the MCL. Acronym city here.
Right, because just to sort of finish that out, because once we have the MCL, then an ORSG is no longer needed. too.
That's right.
So it's also a timing issue.
Laurel?
Yeah, I just have two questions. One, I was wondering if the letter that you sent to Public Water Supplies asking them to ask their lab to report back to them the UCMR3 data, is that letter available? I think it would be a nice model for other states to use.
It's on the website.
Yeah, it is posted to our PFAS.
And then my second
Most of
question
the letters
is-
are.
Okay, great. And then the second question, I know Maine started a program where they're testing biosolids that should be landified for PFAS. Are you guys considering anything like that?
So we did put in place, January of this year, we put in place a requirement for sampling of biosolids as part of either new application for a land application or the renewal process. So we are currently doing that as part of our either new or renewals.
In regards to the biosolids or residuals, given the fact that residuals from drinking water and wastewater are different, are you considering separating the two from the same sort of regulation that they're under? This doesn't seem to make sense to keep regulating residuals from an iron and manganese treatment plant in the same way as an industrial wastewater facility.
In terms of testing requirements?
Yes. Or even though right now they're under the same regulation. Is there any thought to separating the two and having two subsets? Just because what's in a wastewater treatment facility coming out of its outfall is going to be very dramatically different from backwash water from an iron and manganese system. And it doesn't seem feasible to continue to have the same testing requirements in both.
And do those, so the question is, are we gonna look at and regulate residuals from all types of processes the same way? Whether it's industrial processes, wastewater treatment facilities,
now.
or drinking water?
Well, you do now.
And we do now, would we consider something different, splitting
Yes.
something off? So that's something that you should, that if you have suggestions on that, we would welcome that. But right now, in terms of testing for land application, it's the same for all residuals.
And we're looking at that issue, globally.
And we are looking at that issue broadly. Okay, so before we wrap up, I will just remind folks that today's PowerPoints and the video from today are all going to continue to be available where we're housing all of our information about PFAS and drinking water standard development. So the link is here on the website, but if you just go to the DEP website and put in the search bar drinking water standard PFAS, you will get to this landing page and you'll be able to see all this information. And then I have referenced a couple of times the email address for submitting any ongoing comments about MCL development on the drinking water side, MCL development, or consideration of a treatment technique for the entire class. And I'll just read that email address, but again, you'll be able to see it on our website. It's program.director-DWP as in drinking water program @mass.gov. And in your subject line, please put PFAS MCL so that we know what you're commenting on. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Stephanie for close up.
Yeah, I would just say thank you very much for your time, for your attention, for all the feedback that you've given us, that you will continue to give us, and our